Our loose headlight appears to be held in by a chrome trim, which is dented. Strangely enough, virtually every bike I buy seems to have dented headlamp rim at the minute. I don't know why, but anyway. So there's a screw under here, which I'm assuming will. Oh, that's not good. Yes, there we go. That's a peculiar angle. So hopefully, get this out. The chrome rim will come off. Oh. Which it appears reluctant to do. Right. Try that there. Right, I'll turn you off for a second while I investigate why this isn't coming off. Sorry for walking in front of you there. Right, got slightly carried away with myself there and dashed on without really showing you very much is going on. So let's just recap. The headlamp rim came off. It's because it's slightly bent. This is all very straightforward stuff really, but anyway. Behind which was the headlamp, which is attached by only two because one had fallen off, attached by two screws to the inner bowl, and then the inner bowl was just screwed to the alloy housing, which is what I'm going to remove next. When we got our headlamp plug off, there's a wire disconnected. It isn't obvious what it's meant to be attached to, so I'm going to have to look up in the wiring diagram and try and find out what that's meant to be attached to, because it looks like it's been a non-standard fitment, because the yellow here is attached to the blue on the original wiring loop. So I'm going to have to try and find out which is dip, which is main. That probably explains why the dip stick wasn't working when I tried it. By the way, the rear brake wasn't working because when I took the lens off, the bulb was corroded in really scummy condition and fell apart when I took it out. So I've cleaned the contacts there, and we will be testing that when we get back to checking the lights again. So now we're going to take off these two sides to get rid of this grey paint, find out what holds these on, because I think I'm going to have to take the fork leg off to get the bushings out for the brake, which we discussed earlier. And I haven't got a lift to get the Harley in the air at the minute, but one is on its way. So I think if we undo these, so we've got bolt, split washer, plain washer. Right, there's a bolt on each side securing this cover, so I'll also have to remove that. So bear with me 1 second while I get an extension, because it looks like it's going to need one. And they're smaller than ½ inch as well. So let's have a look. There's a nut in there. I'll do the other side and bring it back. There's no point watching me do the same job twice. Okay, now we're on the bench. A very quick look, I think, has identified our issue. In the sealed beam unit, there are 3 clear areas moulded in where there must have been mounting points at some time, which is why the headlight unit just spins round uselessly. Because once it's in there, it should be clipped into place, and that is then screwed onto the inner mounting plate which we saw earlier. This is another US sealed beam headlamp from a Triumph, and that's the sort of thing you expect to find, or what I expected to find. I'm assuming that is the norm. So you'd have some sort of W clip from there to here. So I shall look in the parts book and find out what we're missing. As I say, I don't particularly want to put halogen in there anyway, because I have heard that the Shovelhead alternator is not exactly powerful, and I do want to put indicators back on the bike, and I have got a strange desire to fit what I think the Americans call passing lights on the front, so like 2 spotlights, just because I like the look of them. So I'm going to have to look into an alternative headlamp. So that's as far as we can go on the headlamp today. So I'll get the grey paint stripped off the aluminium cowl, nacelle, whatever you want to call it, and just see what that looks like, polish it up. And then, as I say, I think I'm going to take the forks out anyway to do the bushes for the caliper mounts, in which case I'll strip and clean all of them and change the oil, which will be shown later on. The cowl's just had its first dose of paint stripper. It's coming off really easily, as you can see. I'm assuming it is just aerosol by the way it's coming off, but anyway, it all gets scraped, and then I'll lightly sand it, probably the 320s disc, something like that, by hand, and then put it on the polisher to bring it up. So I will show you each step as I do it, so you can see how rough or otherwise it looks before and after. Hopefully it looks a lot better after. Anyway, I'll strip the other one at the same time and bring you back when we both had the paint removed. Right, paint stripping done. All these have had is a quick wipe over with a scraper and a light wire brush. They are both carrying the correct sequential Harley-Davidson part numbers. However, the grain in this one does seem coarser than the grain in this one. Now, this one had been painted with some sort of etch primer, whereas this one hadn't. So whether this had been rubbed down before it was etched, which gives it that slightly smoother finish, I don't know. There is some minor damage to them, but really I don't care. It's part of the history of the bike. I'll polish it up, stick them on. So the next stage will be to sand them very lightly to get rid of what's left of these ingrained bits of paint. I'll bring it back when I've done that, and then we'll move on to polish them, so you can get them looking a bit shinier. So straight off the buffer, just a small bench grinder with a wheel on. I think that looks a lot better. Bit of polish on that, just give it a final shine. This one will take a little bit more work, but I think that looks better than grey primer. Hopefully you'll agree, but I think it looks better. Right, the mounting bushes for the caliper, which are in the bottom of the fork leg, are going to have to be changed. Came as part of the kit. which means the fork leg's going to have to come off, which means the front wheel's going to have to come out. Now I've spun the wheel, wiggled it, checked the bearings, everything's quiet and smooth. I've pulled the forks backwards and forwards, and there doesn't seem to be any play in the bushes. And at the same time I've checked the steering head bearings, which also seem absolutely fine. So that's all good news. So I'm going to pull the wheel out, which is simply undoing the spindle nut and slackening off the cap on the other side. So I won't show you that. I'm going to take the front mudguard off, which is only 4 bolts. So I probably won't show you that either, because that's quite dull. And I'll bring you back when I'm actually about to remove the leg. So hopefully quite soon. Spindle came out very easily, exactly as I expected. I've put the spacers back in the order they came out, so I remember which side they went on. I've had a quick look at the tyre, which is a 2015, late 2015 tyre, so it's not ancient, still feels soft. That will almost certainly be used again, but we'll go back to the wheel in a minute. For now, the next job is to undo these securing bolts for the front mudguard, which I'll do next. I'll bring you back when the mudguard's off. Right, mudguard's gone, which is simply 4 bolts. And now I've got these huge things. I don't have the correct size spanner, so I'm afraid, as much as I dislike them, it's going to have to be an adjustable. I'm sorry for in your way here for a second. Oh, that won't leave that tight. You shouldn't be under any spring pressure, but we shall find out. It's got a very long thread. Right. Okay. Rub the seal in there. I'll worry about that later. Right, so hopefully it will be a matter. Let's try and bring you over and show you this. Right, let's move you around a bit. Hopefully, when we undo that, that will ease the tension on the leg and it'll come down. It's a bit grubby, but it's not heavily rusted. A lot of that is just dirt. Anyway, that needs to be undone, so let's try and get that out of the way, or at least loosened up, and see where we go from there. So, how tight is this going to be? Reasonably. There we go. Right. That's nice and loose. It's slightly wobbly, but it's actually strapped down to a now then, how does that come off? Right, manual consulted, and it says unscrew to remove, which suggests that this part remains in the yoke. So that's what I will do. It does seem rather strange. You sort of imagine this will be under spring pressure, but we shall see. And it is under spring pressure. Okay. Oh. And now it's stuck. Maybe just tap her. I'm sure that's meant to come off with that. I really can't see that is meant to be separate. I think that whole assembly should come off, to be honest. I think I've misinterpreted something along the way. Right, let me get a hammer, because I think we're going to have to spread this a little bit more to get it out, because that's still pretty tight. Oh no, there we go. Right, yeah, I can't believe that's correct. I think I've done something wrong there. Okay, never mind. Out we come. Or not. Oh dear. Let me just get a hammer and widen that gap. Spread the bottom yoke slightly more. In fact, I spread it extremely well, because out it comes. Right, I'll take you over to the bench and we'll look at it more closely. Right, as is so often the case, consulting the parts manual was actually more useful than the workshop manual. So my suspicions were correct. When it said unscrew, it actually meant twist this out of there, not unscrew that from the leg. So that's what fits in there. That's the bit you saw me unscrew. That rubber bung sits on top there. It doesn't really matter because I was changing the fork oil anyway, which will make it easier to refill with this out of the way. So once everything's done, I'll refill it, screw this back on, and then put them in properly, having cleaned out these orifices to make sure everything slides up and down properly. So the next job before we leave is just to pop these off. I'm imagining a set screw there. For some reason, appears to be a nut and bolt on this side. So that may prove troublesome, but anyway. It's got to come off because I need to get rid of this horrible grey paint. So that will join the other fork parts. At the moment the fork is inverted over an oil pan. You might see it in the background, I don't know. Draining its oil, which is very clean. There's no emulsified oil in there, no sign of water ingress. And the seals appear to be working because there's no sign of any leaks anywhere either. All of which is good news. So I'll take this off and then we will go to the bench as I promised. Right, this is irritating. The first screw has come out quite easily. The second one, as I said, appears to be a nut and bolt. It is in fact a crosshead set screw up inside the shroud, which is very difficult to get on. Well, obviously quite wobbly. And it's incredibly tight all the way off. So presumably the threads have gone in this bottom yoke, which is why I've done it. And whoever's applied it, now that I'm getting it all the way off, has put red Loctite on it, which explains why it's so tight. But there we go. We're off. So I'm assuming the threads have disappeared from there. Let's try the original screw. Yes. Okay, so that will have to go back on. Irritating though it is. There's our chrome shroud. So I will get the paint off that and see how bad it looks. Fork legs had a quick clean off in the parts washer. The seals are fine, no sign of any leaks. The chrome in the area, can you see that part moving? Yeah. The chrome in the upper part where all the action takes place is fine. There's very slight polishing marks where they've been going up and down through the bushes over the years, but I checked for bush wear when the front wheel was still on and there was nothing. The upper part is discoloured. It isn't heavy rusting or anything. It's peculiar. It's odd. But anyway, it's stained and discoloured. But that doesn't matter because it's always out of sight anyway. The drain plug is an Allen-headed socket, so that's not needed at the minute because I fully intend just filling the forks from the top and reassembling that top spring bush thing that I inadvertently removed. And then in here are our caliper mounting bushes, short and long, which I think are going to lead us a merry dance because they're very thin. Let me get the new ones and show you. Right, these are the bushes we saw in an earlier video that came as part of the Zodiac kit. And they're the ones that we've got to get into our fork legs. One short, one long. So the first job is working out how we're going to get the old bushes out, because these are really quite thin. So let me go and see what I can find to get these out. Right, the first attempt is going to be with the vise. I've got a large socket behind, small socket which should be the right size for the bush, and hopefully this will push the bush through and in there. Oh. In fact, that's precisely what it seems to be doing. It's not going to go all the way because that socket is too small. In fact, it hasn't worked at all. Let me bring it back in a second. It has in fact collapsed the bush inside the leg and not really brought it out that far. So now I'm going to try another socket and try tapping it down. See if that will bring it out. By definition, it will have to be a smaller socket. These are old 3/8 I'm not using anymore. Well, I occasionally use, but they're not good quality ones. Let's try this one. Nope. Bad choice. Right, try this one then. Yeah, it's coming. I might try again in the vise actually. I'll bring you back. Right, it worked in the vise. Exactly the same process as I showed you before, just with a smaller socket. I thought it was collapsing the bush, but I was wrong. You're just collapsing what appears to be the remains of old grease or some sort of liner, because as you can see, the actual shell of the bush is still perfectly alright. So the first socket was obviously struggling. So I will now remove the second one using the same method and then bring you back when it's time to put it all back in, new ones back in. But I'll have to clean the leg up first before I do that. So I'll pop out the other one and then show you what we're going to do to get them back in. The short one is even easier because there's less of a grip on the leg. So that's them both out. Now these old bushes are split and the new ones are not. I'm not entirely sure why. But anyway, we can only work with what we've got. So next job is to sand out these recesses very slightly, just to make sure they're absolutely smooth and clean. Lubricate them lightly, and then we'll put the new bushes in using exactly the same method as the one we used to take them out. Right, I'm just going to use a bit of very fine paper. I'm not doing any removal of anything really other than muck and any slight burrs. Well, to be honest, the paper's so light it won't remove burrs anyway, just to get rid of any crap really. That's lovely and smooth. That's lovely and smooth. Right, a light smear of oil. Oh, over enthusiastic with the oil now. Don't want loads, don't need loads. Just enough to lubricate things as they move, and the outside of the bushes as well. Right, let's move back up to the bench. Right, the bushes are started. I tapped them with the hammer first, all the way around just to make sure they were seated. The bush edges are chamfered, which helps them sit, because I wanted to make absolutely sure everything was square before I started winding this in. Which hopefully it is, we shall find out. Maybe just apply a little bit more oil, just to ease our progress, and hopefully this will just wind in. There we go, all the way. Right, I will do the same with the other bush now. And it's job done. Both bushes are now in, nice and solid. So that's ready for the pins. In fact, while I think about it, I will dig out the new pin, which is going to go in the caliper, which you'll see in the other video, because I haven't actually done it yet. I'm waiting for something. So that should fit in there. Sorry, that one, not the top. See, even with new bushes and a new pin, there's always a small amount of movement. Anyway, can't do any more. That's new pins, new bush, that's the best it can get. So I think these calipers are renowned for rattling about a bit. So the next job is to strip the leg of this horrible paint and give it a polish, because it is revolting. Right, I shall bring you back when that's ready to go.